Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and we had two matches last night in China, and I figured I would go through the matches a little bit before we get into tomorrow's games. Um, so I'll do it pretty similar to how I did it yesterday, just with a different voice. So first up, we have LGD against World Elite. LGD won game one. In game one, we can go back, I guess. In game one, World Elite was on Jin, and LGD was on Ashe. I've talked about this already. Some people seem to think that Jin is like a good pick against Ashe, but it's really not. Like the win condition that you're kind of playing around is getting ahead in the early game, and then being able to use Jin as like a supportive champion during the mid and late game team fights, where Jin's ultimate is going to be able to provide a little bit of additional damage. You have decent burst potential from the Jin, but I mean, if you look at World Elite's composition, they have the Ornn and they have the Leona. It's going to be pretty difficult for Jin to kill those champions in the late game without a gigantic gold lead. So yeah, that's my position on the Jin Ashe situation. I don't think that Jin is as good as these teams seem to think that it is. So in game one, the Ashe side of this won. Let's see what happens in game two. So in game two, this is one of the most important parts of the game. So we have World Elite invading for this camp right here. The reason why they did this is because they knew Graves was on the top half of the map, so they felt comfortable going for this kind of play. Ashe is already shoving in the bot lane. Ashe plus Leona and Lee Sin. That should be a relatively easy kill. It should be relatively easy to get a kill onto the Jin or the Bard if they stay under the tower and don't respect a tower dive. So Leona goes in with her E, but nothing happens. So this is pretty bad for World Elite. Leona flashes in, eats a tower shot, eats an exhaust, and the Renekton teleports down. So this is the kind of situation where the World Elite side of the matchup is the stronger side of the matchup, and it required additional resources from LGD to respond to the play correctly. And it also required World Elite to make a risky decision. So World Elite losing the first game, maybe they felt like they had to play more aggressive in the second game so that the Jin could not get ahead. Like, I'm sure they understand the win conditions of this matchup. So yeah, pretty unlucky. Teacher Ma is getting stomped in the mid lane. Peanut said afterwards that he knows how to play against the he knows how to gank Aurelion Souls and the importance of ganking Aurelion Souls because he has played with good Aurelion Souls in the past, which is pretty interesting because it's not a typical champion. So just that additional game knowledge was pretty helpful for them. So like I said, the Jin side of the matchup is the weaker side of the matchup. But now that Jin has a gold advantage, it's going to be a lot easier for them to play the game. The other thing to take into consideration is that World Elite, it's 4 minutes and 30 seconds into the game. They already have a 1.5k gold lead. So this is not your typical game of League of Legends. This is not what you're pick banning around. You should not draft a team composition planning to snowball. You can try to snowball, but if your primary win condition is snowballing and dependent on the enemy to make bad decisions, I feel like that's just a bad idea. That's a bad draft. You have to assume correct play. That's really the best way to look at League of Legends and analyze League of Legends, in my opinion. So throughout this game, LGD has a gigantic gold lead, and they just snowball out of control. So I don't think that the Ashe and the Jin really had much to do in this matchup, had much to do with this game getting out of control. It's a 2,000 gold lead. Once you get onto that 2,000 gold lead and spend that gold, you are going to be significantly stronger than the other team. World Elite could still theoretically outscale this because of Ornn, but in order for that to work, they would have to maintain a 2,000 gold deficit through level like 16 for the items to start catching up. Ashe with Blade of the Ruined King, Runaan's Hurricane. It might even be a little bit longer because Ashe is not the best champion with Ornn in terms of an upgrade. And neither is Aurelion Sol really either. So I wonder what their plan was with that. This game is decided before that point anyway, so it's already 3,000 gold, down 2 dragons. LGD's making plays around the map, 3,000 gold, 3,000 gold. They have dragon control, which that's one of the reasons why I guess you could say that Jhin can be a helpful champion, is if you're going to continuously fight all of these dragons. And this was probably the last team fight of any value. Actually, not even. It's already a 5.7k gold lead. Yeah, so that goes 3 for 3. Dragon's still on the map. They're gonna be able to take the dragon, I'm assuming. So then they're on Soul Point. Is this another fight? This is funny because this is the kind of thing that you love for DraftKings purposes. You're really looking for a team to continuously contest these objectives, because that's where you're going to get that additional kill upside. And I think they got like 27 kills in this game or something. So this is what a snowballed game of League of Legends looks like. They're down 8,000 gold. So there aren't many takeaways from this game in terms of the champions that are picked. It was more about just getting outplayed by LGD. I was on LGD last night because I thought that they were the better team. They won the first time that these two teams played, I believe. And I think it has a lot to do with the different positions of strength within the team. So the jungler is better on LGD. Not significantly, but Peanut is better than Beishang, and then Xie is better than Teacher Ma. So the jungle mid advantage is always pretty important on this patch, especially in this matchup. The other thing that I would take away, and this is actually something I was talking to the Yale team about yesterday, is that Ashe. So basically, one of the players asked, "Why is Ashe becoming so popular nowadays? Like, why do teams want to play Ashe into things like Aphelios and into things like Ezreal?" And it's a great question. It's a great question because he's right. The Ashe pick kind of came out of nowhere. So what are the reasons that Ashe started being played? Ashe started being played because it's okay against Aphelios because you can punish positional mistakes very good, and it's a little bit better in the laning phase. So if you can play something like Ashe Karma or Ashe Bard, you're going to be able to do really well against the Aphelios. However, outside of that, I think that the Ashe has been extremely overvalued. And the main reason I say that is because, especially in the Aphelios matchup, when it's Aphelios against Ashe, I really think that the biggest influence on those lanes are the supports. So Karma is able to continuously poke out the Aphelios with her mantra Qs and stuff like that. That is like an extremely important part of this. And then also Bard's ultimate. So personally, the reason why I think Ashe Bard is good into Aphelios is because they both have long range ultimates that can continuously force Aphelios to have to use his flash defensively before a fight even breaks out. So if you have two champions like Ashe and Bard that can force out the flash, and then you have other champions that can dive onto the Aphelios, you're going to be able to continuously move the pocket. Like I talk about immobile AD carries as pocket passers, and in order for them to be less effective, you need to move them off their spot, just like in football. And then with the Karma and Ashe, it's more about winning the laning phase, being oppressive in laning phase, and then that was a pretty horrible kick. Using your advantage that way. So like building a gradual gold lead by winning the laning phase, keeping Aphelios down a little bit, getting to the Dragon team fight, and not letting him 200 years you, which is almost inevitable in most games. Like that's why I still prefer the Aphelios side of the matchup. I do think that there are ways to play against Aphelios, but it's like in in poker. Would you rather play aces or would you rather play kings? And you'd rather play the aces every time. And right now, Aphelios is aces. So the next match was Invictus Gaming against V5. So I'm going to go through both of these drafts, and then we'll look at... I'm going to go through all three drafts. This goes 3 games. And there are some pretty interesting decision points here. So Invictus Gaming bans out Thresh. Thresh is one of PP God's best champions. Aphelios is locked in first. On V5, we have Bard and we have Nidalee. So already I like this from V5 because it shows that they understand the ways to attack Aphelios. So they have a ranged jungler that can do poke damage. They have the Bard that can try to force out the flash from Aphelios. They have a lot of gank opportunities by setting it up with the Bard, so the Bard just has to play super aggressive. So we get the Ashe Bard. One question I have for Invictus Gaming would be, why are you not banning out Ashe? Ashe is apparently SamD's best champion. They've been playing it all split. And as I thought about this morning, I kind of realized if I was Invictus Gaming or Top Esports or one of these teams that is almost guaranteed to get into the playoffs at this point, I don't think I'd ban out the Ashe either. I'd let them play it against me. I'd see how it works on stage, see the plays that they kind of play around, like their go-to plays, and then I would try to counter that in the playoffs. So I don't have a problem with V5 continuously going back to their bread and butter, because obviously they're trying to get wins to get into playoffs. The difference is that Invictus Gaming and Top Esports, they're already thinking about playoffs, I'm assuming, and trying to get every advantage they can. So I don't know if that's the reason why teams are still leaving up the Ashe for Victory 5, but if that's the reason, I think that's a pretty smart reason, because you can see a bunch of additional stuff from this team. Well, not see a bunch of different stuff. You're going to take away this when you get into the playoffs. So we have Nidalee, we have Ashe, so 3 ranged champions. We have Nautilus. Nautilus plus Aphelios is a pretty good lane. It also helps protect Aphelios in the late game. Nautilus can continuously root players with his auto attack. Then we have Lee Sin. Lee Sin is not the best champion right now. He's played more because the players are comfortable with it, and when Lee Sin's team is losing, Lee Sin can still make plays around Dragon, around Baron, can find picks, and also create early game leads. And a lot of League of Legends right now is about creating early game leads and fighting around the dragons. V5 picks up Zoe. Zoe's a busted champion. That's really the next champion that I want to learn for myself, because I think it would fit my playstyle personally, and it's like very good. It's a very good champion. There's not really much else to say about that. So Invictus Gaming picks up Jace and Orianna. Not 100% convinced that the Jace was a good pick here. But it is an interesting thing to think about, because the Jace does give additional mobility to Aphelios in the form of his gate, because it gives movement speed to everybody that passes through it. So that is like a pretty good way to get additional move speed onto Aphelios, makes him safer throughout the game. What is the big play that happens in the early game? Looks like a dragon fight. Yeah, okay. So let's watch this real quick and I'll slow it down. Alright, so we're 6 minutes into the game. Invictus Gaming has a 1,000 gold lead. Jace has a small CS advantage over Wukong, which is not very important right now. We have a kill onto Lee Sin. We have the bot lane for Invictus Gaming slightly ahead as well. So this is going to come down to execution. So let's slow it down and see what happens. So Baolan started up the dragon before eliminating the ward. You should always eliminate the ward first, because that way at least it's a question of whether or not you started the dragon. So So let's pause that real quick. So what is going on the map? So we have Nidalee, we have 2 champions on the bot side, and we have 1 champion on the top side. So we have Zoe, and then we have 4 champions in the Dragon Pit. So what can V5 do to create a good team fight for themselves is get poke damage down. And why would they want to get poke damage down? It's because they have Nidalee, they have Zoe, and they have Ashe and Bard. So in a traditional like front-to-back team fight, it's going to be difficult to do more damage than an Aphelios, than an Orianna that gets off a good shock blast or a shockwave. So you really do need that additional poke damage to have a chance in this fight. They also have the dragon doing damage in this fight, which is, it's not negligible. So that's another thing to kind of take into consideration. So right now, Invictus Gaming's call is just take the dragon and then worry about everything else afterwards, which I don't think is necessarily a mistake. Right there, Zoe gets a little bit of additional poke damage onto the Lee Sin. Just looking at flashes, we have flash on Nautilus, flash on Aphelios, flash on Orianna, flash on Lee Sin. And this isn't done very often, but I don't think it's the worst idea for at least 1 or 2 of these champions to flash out of the pit, allow Lee Sin an escape route, and then just think to yourself, I traded a couple of flashes for the first dragon, and then playing safe in the laning phase until the next dragon. The cooldown on flash is normally 5 minutes, unless you have some kind of CDR from like keystones and runes. So they will have it for the next dragon fight, and if you're Invictus Gaming, I don't think it's the worst idea to only play around the dragon fights. One other thing I guess I could kind of mention is that I've been discussing positioning with the Yale team a lot as well. So around dragons, there are really only 2 things to take into consideration from a positional perspective. You need to think to yourself, if I am the team that's taking the dragon, how do I deal with a team that's walking into me? And if I am the team that's trying to push a team off of a dragon or respond to a dragon, can my team walk onto this team? Like, is it advantageous for us to walk towards them, or are we better off trading objectives? So right now, Victory 5 is saying to themselves, they're taking a decent amount of damage from the dragon. Zoe's trying to get poke damage in, so they're going to look for a fight, which is not necessarily the right call, because they don't have a lot of great engage. They don't have many good ways to engage. They don't have Bard ultimate yet. They don't have Ashe ultimate yet. So this is really just a true skirmish that's going to require outplay. So Invictus Gaming, we have 1 flash burned. We have 3 champions stuck in the pit. So Rookie and Puff are kind of screwed. Baolon did kind of mess us up a little bit. Baolon was better off not engaging onto the Zoe. There wasn't going to be any follow-up. So unless the call was, I'm going to sacrifice myself for this dragon, I think that it was a mistake for Baolon to go onto the Zoe. Aphelios ate a spear right there. Bard's doing a good job. And then, see, we still had to burn all these flashes. So what I would say is, if you are stuck in the pit already and you know that your escape routes are being taken away from you, so you can't walk out in this direction, you can't walk out into this direction, your best bet is to just flash out over the wall. And again, this is not ideal. You don't want to go into a play thinking to yourself, I'm going to flash out over the dragon pit wall. But it's something that needs to be talked about, at least. So continue playing this. We got the cleanse out of Aphelios as well. So now Aphelios is in a pretty dangerous position. Bard has the ability to get out over with Mystical Journey. And the trade goes 3 for 2. So this isn't a big deal. I think that going after the dragon is fine by Invictus Gaming, as long as they continue to play around that advantage. The more concerning part is that they have Okay. So they basically take this entire tower off of one Rift Herald play, which is very good. So far, Invictus Gaming is a team that made the first play. They made it around Dragon. V5 makes the second play. They made it around the Rift Herald, and it was a good time to do it because the Dragon is not coming up for several minutes, so there's no reason not to go after it. The levels are pretty close across the map. It's just a good play by V5. Now they have the tower advantage, so again, now we have to take into consideration the positional advantages across the map. And I don't hear many people talking about the significance of taking towers from in regards to the position that it allows you, because it is very difficult to play with towers down. Are they going to take this tower? Signs point to yes. Uh-oh. Wow. Signs point to no. So they were not able to take the tower. And this is the significance of taking towers, because now you need to spend the additional time to get back into the bot lane and actually finish that tower when you could have just zoned off the Wukong and taken the tower. The tower is more important than Wukong because you're getting more gold for killing the tower, and you're also creating a better position. You're reducing the deficit. You're reducing the tower deficit that you currently have, and those things are more important than getting a couple hundred gold from a kill on Wukong. You do also get experience, but I would rather have a tower, personally. See, and that tower is still up in the bot lane, so this would have been a much easier way. This would have been a much easier contest of the dragon, or it would have been a possible contest of the dragon if you got rid of that tower earlier, because you can push out that wave and create additional avenues to get into the dragon. So you'd be able to I guess you can't see the mini map right now. Let me switch that. So you'd be able to push the minions up the lane, and then that creates an additional avenue to get into the team fight. It also helps you get ward coverage, and that's not a very good arrow. It helps you get ward coverage up in here, and then you also have flanking opportunities from here, flanking opportunities from here. This one is less likely because you still have the mid tower that's up there, but you can come in from this direction. You can come in from this direction. It's only that one spot that's kind of in question, and Zoe has the advantage, so it's most likely you're not going to be able to walk through the mid lane as a team. That's also the spot where you're most likely to get picked off by Zoe. So I think opening the bot tower really would have been pretty helpful for Invictus Gaming. They're down 2,000 gold. A lot of that gold is an artificial gold lead, and by artificial, I mean caused by towers. So it wasn't like through kills or minions, which are really the more sticky gold leads, because the only ways you can get those back is through shutdowns and stuff, and it's more difficult to acquire that gold because the other player's ahead of you, so they have to make a mistake in order for you to get that shutdown gold, typically. So now we're on 1 dragon to 1. So the fact that they had to give up that second dragon is pretty bad, because they gave up a decent amount to acquire that first dragon. But we can skip ahead. I'm guessing the next big play is around dragon again. Another Rift Herald. Invictus Gaming finally gets the bot tower. So that took them an additional, what, 8 minutes to get that tower? Just keep going. Alright, Lee Sin dies. And the mid tower's looking like it's going to die. Yep, that dies. Okay. So we have dragon up in 30 seconds. How are people dying right here? Uh-oh. Ooh, that's a good pick by Mole. So Orianna was walking... Oh, no. Well, Orianna was walking up to try to get a shockwave onto the Bard and Ashe before the dragon started, but was picked off by the Zoe, and that's going to give away the next dragon. Almost definitely. Rift Herald, so that's Wow. So they took 3 towers. 3 towers. They take a dragon. The Shy goes in to try to kill them. That's pretty questionable. And the game is over at that point. Most professional teams are able to win a game from that position. And I'm not trying to take anything away from V5. They played well. They did their job in the early game, but we shouldn't be giving them undue credit for how they won this game. I think it was a pretty generic game between 2 good teams. Like, at this point, I just think of V5 as a good team. I'm not thinking to myself, oh, they were bad last split. I'm just like, okay, well, this entire split they've been good. And that's kind of the only thing that I take into consideration when I look at their games. I'm not giving them any additional credit because they used to be bad. All right, so blue side, Invictus Gaming is blue side again. First pick, they grab the Aphelios and they get rid of Bard. So this is kind of what I'm talking about. I think as time goes on, teams will realize that the Bard is much more important than the Ashe. I think Bard's probably one of the best champions in the game right now. His ultimate is pretty game-changing. It can turn off the dragon. It can turn off the Baron. It can shut down towers that are getting charged with the Rift Herald. It can create engages. It can create disengages. There's just so many different ways to use Bard's ultimate. It's a very, very, very good ability. So we have Aphelios, we have Ashe. So already I'm on the side of Invictus Gaming in this one. And it's not an exact science, obviously. There are other ways that you can exploit the Aphelios, but when you're locking in something like Set, it's not guaranteed that you're going to be able to do that. So we have Aphelios, we have Graves, and Nidalee in this game. So Graves and Nidalee are basically even. Aphelios and Ashe, most people would say it's pretty even. I think there's an advantage to Aphelios. We have Baolon on Thresh, and Baolon plays a good Thresh. This is a very good game from Baolon that we're about to see. Nico is a rookie special, which is a good blind pick for rookie because rookie can play it against anything basically. And then we have the Ornn coming in. So obviously when we talk about Aphelios, we talk about players, champions that walk into Aphelios. That's a negative. So we have the Ornn, we have the Set, and we have the Pantheon. So all 3 of these champions want to jump onto Aphelios. And it makes sense because that's the first level of thinking, is how do I stop the immobile pocket passer? I try to jump onto them and force them to run away. The problem is that Aphelios is a ridiculous champion that can basically just shred through the entire team at once because of the build path. So they go Infinity Edge, they go Runaan's Hurricane, and at that point it's like, okay, well, I'm able to crit 3 people walking at me at once. They also have Kennen, which creates zones around the Aphelios that make it more difficult to walk in. They have the Pop Blossom from Nico, which does the same thing, creates a large area of effect to protect the Aphelios. We have the Cage from Thresh, so that's a third thing that's going to create space for Aphelios. And then we have Graves. Graves is mostly just going to be doing damage, but also has the Blind, so the Blind can kind of help. But the other 3 champions are really the ones that are going to be able to protect Aphelios throughout the game. So Set in the mid lane, not a great pick, especially against something like Nico. We have a lot of disengage from Invictus Gaming, so I think it's a pretty smart team composition, especially with Aphelios. We see a lot of different kinds of Aphelios compositions. These are one of my favorite types of compositions because we have champions like Kennen and Nico that can both disengage but also flank and engage onto the backline. So when Nidalee and Ashe are the only champions that are going to be in the backline, Kennen can kill both of them with his ultimate, basically. Nico can kill both of them with her ult as well. And if any of these champions get stunned by the Kennen, by the Nico, or caught off with a Thresh hook, Aphelios can ult them. So we also have pick opportunities. There are just a lot of difficult kinds of team fights that Victory 5 is going to have to navigate. And that's not typically what you think of when you think of an Aphelios composition. So I think it was a good adaptation by them. And it also got their players onto champions that they're very good at. So let's clear the screen. Let's try to find a spot that opens up the game. So it's still gold's still basically even, gold's still basically even. We have one dragon and one dragon. This was an interesting play because Invictus Gaming was trying to be the aggressors, but they actually ended up having their pick go wrong, which is not typical. But still, the gold lead was still very close, so I'm not too concerned with that. And basically, that's not saying that like I'm not concerned Invictus Gaming should still win. I'm saying there's no reason to be concerned because the gold lead is still extremely close. It's basically still a 50-50. So if you're V5 and you're okay going 50-50, then great. But you're going to get outscaled in this spot if you're not careful. Because Aphelios just scales better than Ashe in terms of damage output. It's not even a debate. Like, Ashe is more of a positional champion, and Aphelios is more of a I'm going to kill your entire team champion. Yeah, so this is actually one of the most important fights of the game. Alright, so let's back it up. Alright, so before we get started, let's take a look at what's going on the map. So we have Aphelios down in the bot lane, we have Ornn down in the bot lane. So this, let me turn off the mini-map, or my webcam again. So we have Aphelios in the bot lane. Aphelios has Cleanse and Flash. Ornn has Teleport. So which one of these champions can get to the fight first? That would be the Ornn. So Aphelios has to walk up. Aphelios is currently walking up through the jungle. It's going to take about between 15 to 25 seconds for the Aphelios to walk up there, depending on the path. But there is a lot of other stuff going on in this fight. So Rookie is currently flanking. The Shy was flanking from the position in the back as well. Not flanking, looking for a flank from the back as well. PP God is the first champion to go down, which is pretty scary if you are V5. But it looks like they're still trying to make a play. And this might have just been a mistake on their part to not just like give up the advantage. So Mole goes in using his ultimate, but there is not a lot that you can really accomplish as the set here other than getting off CC onto the back line. But this is one of the reasons why I don't think that Puff is a great player. And Puff is obviously very good, but Puff is not an elite AD carry in the world, and a lot of it comes down to like positioning mistakes like this. So if you're Puff, like there were a lot of times where Puff kind of took one sidestep too close to the set, ended up getting pulled in, face breakered, the W hits, and then Nidalee is able to flash over a wall. But this is a 2-for-2, and Invictus Gaming picks up a few kills on the backside and was already able to secure the Rift Herald. So the objective went to Invictus Gaming. The fight went even. So which team won the trade? Invictus Gaming won the trade. So that could have actually broken up. That play could have broken open the game, but it didn't because of a good response by Weiwei. So Weiwei was 6-1 at this point in the game, and it's really on the Nidalee to try to carry this game. So how does a Nidalee carry the game is by getting picks and kind of going for assassination opportunities onto the backline or dueling the Graves. But Graves, even though he's behind, he's really not that afraid of the Nidalee. So this is another important fight. It's the third dragon, and whichever team secures this basically will put a 12-minute clock on the game, where at 12 minutes from this point, they're going to be able to force the other team to fight if they continue to stack dragons. The Shy and Mole are both trying to fight over the Tribush because it's going to be a good flanking space. And I think V5 may have actually made a couple of mistakes here. So again, we can talk about the positioning of both teams. V5 is in position around the dragon, and Invictus Gaming is basically thinking to themselves, do we want to walk into the river from this direction, or do we want to walk up and try to trade the objective? I think trading the objective would have been fine here, because they're not afraid of the game 12 minutes from now. If anything, that's better for them, as long as they don't make several mistakes. So we have PP God and Mole. They're both looking for flanking opportunities onto the back side of Invictus Gaming. And actually, the analyst made some pretty good jokes, some pretty good PP God jokes throughout this one. So you might actually want to watch the VOD. It's hilarious how like one player's name can completely change like a cast. But I'm not complaining. So Graves was in there trying to contest the dragon, which I think was a smart, maybe not a smart idea, but I understand the reasoning behind it. However, Puff again is kind of in the middle of nowhere, and we'll see that he's not really punished for this. So Puff should probably just be with the rest of his team over here. Like, what AoE are you afraid of from the side of V5? Like, if an Ash arrow comes in, the Ash arrow is going to hit the front line. If Set is looking for somebody to ult, Set is either going to look from this direction or is going to be flanking from this direction or this direction. Just not really sure. So actually, Ash is disconnected from the team fight right now, which is interesting as well. So we have both AD carries kind of off in the middle of nowhere while this dragon is happening. So Thresh throws out the lantern and is trying to give Graves an opportunity to go for a smite steal. But the Graves gets turned on. The Ashe barely misses. Graves fires his Q, flashes over the wall. Mole is in the back line still, so now it's 2-on-1. But this it's just a really weird fight, and it's kind of unfortunate that a very good match between two good teams could be essentially decided by a play like this. Because V5 loses the dragon, but they create like over a 2,000 gold lead. They get the shutdown onto Nidalee, which was gigantic. It was like at least 500 gold. Nidalee was 6-1 at that point. Let's actually check that out. 400 gold. So it's 400 plus the additional gold you get from kills in general. So that was a 700 gold kill. So that's 2.4k gold that they've gotten from that team fight. They also had an opportunity to take the dragon, and then after this, they're going to transition directly into a Baron. So that's another thing that teams really don't take into consideration. That I think should be one of the main things you're drafting around. Not main things you're drafting around, but one thing to consider during your draft is what time can we take Baron? Like, what do the conditions have to be in the game for us to take Baron? And instead of it being a draft by draft basis, I think that your like foundational draft principles should be informed at least somewhat by the dragon and Baron conditions that you have. And I think that's why Ashe is another reason why Ashe is a pretty good champion. Blade of the Ruined King champions kill Baron very fast. Callista's a very good Baron champion. Aphelios is a very good Baron champion. Someone like Jhin is a horrible Baron champion. So that's always another knock that you have against Jhin as a champion. But this was a risky call by Invictus Gaming. But in this situation, I think it's the right call to make because you're forcing the other team to walk into you. So again, this is the position that we're talking about. So if you're Invictus Gaming, the Blast Cone was taken care of. So you know that they're going to be coming in from this area right here. We have Kennen who can defend that space. We have Nico who can defend that space. And we have Thresh who can defend that space. If any of these champions get some kind of CC onto V5, then Aphelios is going to be able to shoot out his ultimate and like either lock them in place or just do an additional absurd amount of damage. That's not how it went right now, but that is why the position was significant. Invictus Gaming just didn't execute it correctly, and The fact that they didn't execute correctly, and they're on these health bars, made this much closer than it had to be. But they're not punished in this situation. So Baron ends up going down. Aphelios takes Baron extremely fast, especially when they have a Graves on their team. And V5 continues to walk forward. So as long as Invictus Gaming gets out of this with like 3... Honestly, as long as they get out of this with one champion that has Baron, they're probably feeling pretty good. They're going to be able to create a tower advantage based off of this. Right now, they have 2 towers already. With Baron buff, mid tower is going to fall very easily. So it just shows you how fast the game can kind of get turned on its head because of a dragon fight, because of a Baron fight. So let's just remind everyone how close this game was. So it's 19 minutes and 20 seconds. There was a 600 gold difference. Right? And then we go to the 21-minute mark. And now it's a 4,000 gold difference. And what created that 4,000 gold difference? It was a dragon fight, and it was taking a Baron. They didn't even get the dragon, which would have been additional ambient gold in the form of stats. But yeah, that's how you turn a game on its head. And that's why you need to be strong at the 20-minute mark. Anybody who's been watching my videos consistently has heard about the like ability to project 20 to 30 minutes into the game. This was an easy one because the game was so close. They had the tower advantage and the kills were within like a few, so they kind of knew that they were very close. This was actually a spot in the game where I remember watching this live, and the Thresh was very impactful during this team fight. Nico with some more roots. Thresh flays backwards. I like this hook chance by Thresh. He went for the Nidalee dodging away, but yeah, that play was basically caused by Thresh earlier. And then that game is over, so let's get into the last draft. So again, what happens in the draft? Aphelios and Ashe. And Bard is gone. So we go Aphelios 1, then we have Thresh. Thresh is another one of PP God's best champions. Braum is it's not that it's questionable, it's just that it's surprising. A lot of people don't like Braum as a champion. They think it's too passive. But Braum, especially with somebody like Aphelios, is actually pretty strong. Braum's passive is out of control. The ability to get stun procs onto several enemies in the same fight is very strong, in my opinion, especially in a meta where Graves is a popular champion. So I know they didn't end up picking the Graves here, but if they went something like Aphelios, Graves, Braum, or like Aphelios, Kindred, Braum, Aphelios, even Nidalee Braum, you're going to have a lot of auto attacks in these fights. They didn't follow up on it because they had the Lysandra and the Kennen. Kennen does have the chance of going on hit Kennen, but in a team fight, you're really not going to depend on his auto attacks to win, or proc a passive. So we have Thresh, which is a fine champion. We have Graves, which is a good champion in the jungle. We have Ashe, which I think is overvalued right now, especially into the Aphelios matchup, because how else are you going to be able to get onto the Aphelios? I think that the Bard is really the key champion that unlocks this kind of situation. They also didn't pick Karma. Karma was another champion they could have considered at this point, but maybe that's a read that Invictus Gaming has on V5, is that they don't play the Karma. Then we had LeBlanc come in, and it's funny because Mole actually used Rookie's skin, Rookie's LeBlanc skin. That's always fun. Then we had Lysandra, Kennen, and Sylas. So Sylas actually did a very good job in this game of controlling the top lane for the first, like, probably 6 or 7 minutes. At least the first 4 or 5 levels. There were several times when Kennen almost actually died. Kennen did give up first blood to Graves and Sylas. So that was a chance for them to kind of snowball the game, but that didn't happen. 15 minutes in the game, Invictus Gaming is up 1.5k gold. It's 7-7. This was a very good flank by the Shy, so this is, I guess, something we should take a look at. Actually, no, we don't need to take a look at it. But basically, the Fly came in from the river and cleaned up a team fight. And actually, I guess that is the best time to look at, because that's what opened the game up. So let's go back a little bit more. And it's always fun to watch replays, because you get to see, like, that it's not always a bad decision that opens up a game. Sometimes it's like several good decisions by opposing teams that get the game into a spot that they weren't expecting. And you see this kind of thing happen in chess as well. But I'm not a great chess player. I think chess has a lot of great connections with League of Legends and similarities with League of Legends. All right, so let's back it up one more time. Okay, so if we look at the map state right now, Invictus Gaming is up only 1 kill, but they're up over 1,000 gold, so they're up 1,500 gold right now. They have 2 turret plates. They've taken first tower in the bot lane. They have 2 turret plates in the top lane that are already gone. Silas is in the top lane. Silas has teleport. Kennen does not have teleport. Ashe doesn't have flash, and that's really the most important thing. That's another thing that we've been talking to the Yale players about, is playing around summoners better. Because if you watch a professional match, that is like the most important thing to watch out for. So Ning is looking for a flank onto the Ashe. Ashe does not have flash, like I said, and he's able to ultimate the Ashe backwards into Puff. Puff at this point already has 4 kills, so the Aphelios is gigantic. So before we push forward in this review, we need to ask ourselves, what did the Ashe pick really accomplish in this game? The job of the Ashe was to shut down the Aphelios in the lane. And I'm not blaming Samdi for Aphelios getting big in this game, but this is why you can't depend on the pick ban to take care of Aphelios, because there are other ways to get Aphelios ahead. So Aphelios got a couple of kills in the early game because of fights that were happening in the bot lane, around Dragon, around the Rift Herald. Like, it's not just about the laning phase and how these two bot lanes match up with one another. It's also about, like, what other things are going to happen around the map, and will Aphelios be able to get some cheap kills? Because if Aphelios is getting cheap kills, then you're just kind of screwed. And that, in my opinion, that's really why he is... that's another reason why he's the best champion in the game, is even if you counter him in the lane, you're not necessarily going to stop him from snowballing. So again, we have the Kennen up in the top lane. We already knew this. So Invictus Gaming has 3 champions on low health. LeBlanc is going in. This was a good response by Invictus Gaming. They actually kept the LeBlanc from getting a kill onto Puff, which most games that is very likely that the Aphelios goes down if they're not playing it smart. So V5, that trade went 1 for 1. V5 has 3 members at 50% health or less, and they're getting a little bit greedy, pushing in mid and trying to take this tower. This was a good look by Graves to go after the Lissandra. Lissandra should not have backed right in that spot. She thought that she was hidden behind that wall, but she was not. However, it's funny because that bad decision led to a good opportunity for Invictus Gaming. So like I said before, the Shy was top lane, didn't have teleport, walks down the river, and creates several kills for his team because he was late to a fight. So they didn't even make a good decision there, and Aphelios still got additional kills. So I'm not saying like earlier in this video I said you cannot depend on the enemy team to make bad decisions. You also can't assume that they're going to make all the right decisions either. You kind of just have to I don't know, it's not that it seems hypocritical, it's just that it might sound inconsistent, but the reason why I say this is because you cannot assume that the enemy team is going to make every decision perfectly or every decision imperfectly. So you need to kind of play for those 50-50 scenarios and build up as many advantages as you can. So that's why you want to have champions that have flexibility, are good when they're winning, are good when they're losing. Because you don't know what the game state is going to look like in the game. That's also one of the most important reasons why teams should be focused a little bit more on scaling, because you don't know if you're going to be the team that has the plus 2,000 advantage or is down 2,000 gold when we get to the most important fight of the game. So that's basically it from this one. The game really was decided at this point. I know that it wasn't 100% decided, but Invictus Gaming played the rest of this really well, and there are not many other spots that we should really take a look at in this one. So let's quickly take a look at tomorrow's matches. Let's see if anybody's put out the starting lineups yet. I guess not. Okay, so we have OMG and FPX, and then we have Vici Gaming and EDG. So we can actually go to Gamepedia. My favorite spot to go for League of Legends information. FPX and OMG. So FPX obviously has been on a big losing streak. They've lost a lot of games recently. I still think they're a very good team. I don't change my opinion on talent. Like, they might be going through a rough patch right now, but they're still the more talented team. So we have Khan against Curse. Khan is a better player, but Curse has been playing well. Tian against Hacker. Tian's a better player, but Hacker's been playing okay. Tian's still definitely better. Doinb against Icon. Icon is probably the best player from OMG. Doinb is better than Icon. And then in the bot lane, we have LWX and Crisp against SMLZ and Cold. I think the biggest advantage for Fun Plus Phoenix is LWX and Crisp, even though LWX and Crisp have looked bad recently, specifically LWX. And then the second match was Vici Gaming and EDG. This is a very interesting match to me. Vici Gaming has been playing very well recently. Cube against probably Xiaoshang. That's probably a 50-50. Cube has held his own against the other top laners they've played against recently, which is like 369 from Top Esports, and I think also Zoom from JDG. In the jungle, we have Junjia and Jai Jai. I'm not sure which one is playing. It's most likely going to be Aix over Leon. And then we have Scout against Zika in the mid lane. Scout, I would normally be on the side of Scout in this matchup. I think Zika has kind of proven that they are very good. He is very good. So that's basically a 50-50. Bot lane, we have Hope against iBoy. I think Hope is the better side of this one. And then it's Hong and Maestro against Mako. They've been going back and forth between their supports, so I don't think there's a gigantic advantage either side. If anything, it's going to be on Mako's side. But that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.